All right, everybody having a good convention so far? Got a lot of good speakers, a lot of fun. Hopefully you didn't lose all your money at the casinos. But today, it's going to be a great day. Our next speaker is the Jim Linzy Memorial Speaker, the keynote speaker, Mr. Askel Vibe. He runs a practice in Norway. He's an AWCF. And he's going to be talking and presenting something extremely interesting. We don't know for sure. Maybe somebody in here does. Is it better to shoe a horse or leave it barefoot? That's pretty theoretical. Well, Mr. Askel has been working on some of the nicest FEI Grand Prix level horses internationally, traveling on his practice. And he's partnered with the research team, and he's helping to bring some scientific data, and he's going to be presenting that today. If we could introduce him, welcome with applause, that'd be great.
Good morning. Good morning. First of all, I want to say I'm very grateful to be invited to do this. It's a great honor. As you said, my name is Askel. I'm a farrier from Norway, and I just want to start off with apologizing, because since my first language is not English, I might say things that you find rude, or you don't understand, or maybe even offensive. And then I would just want to say, like I say to my wife, which is only English speaking, it's all language confusions, okay? So just forgive me and bear with me. If there is anything you don't understand what I'm saying, or you didn't really hear it, someone said that the sound can be a little bit bad, just stop me. We got time. And I don't mind to be interrupted. Well, what we're going to talk about today is barefoot trimming. And I find it actually a little bit boring subject, because it's not a lot to do with it. It's just, we always had barefoot horses in all of our practices. But I find that it's getting more and more, what can I say, it's more and more getting mainstream. It used to be that it was a part of our industry. It was called barefoot trimmers, and that was a bit controversy against it. It's been turning into more like almost like a cult, and that obviously that created a divide between the ones who all believed in having horses barefoot and us, which is farriers. Even though most farriers, we have a lot of barefooted horses in our practice, so it's not really a big thing. What I'm going to talk about today is first a barefoot research project that I was involved in. I listened to yesterday, it was Danny Ellis and Derek Rupard. Both of them were talking about loading the frog and how important that is. And we're also touching into how many issues, how much problems we can get by not loading the frog and overloading the hoof wall. So I'm not going to touch that so much. What I'm going to talk about is more like the biomechanics. What is the result for the performance? Also going to talk a little bit about health benefits, but mainly what is happening with the performance of the horse, which is also very interesting. But the barefoot research that they did is pretty extensive, so it's not really published yet, all of it, but I have some information I can share with you. Then we're going to talk about barefoot on the high level show jumping, how it's managed. What are the cons, what are the pros, what it's really about. Back in Scandinavia, there's been a lot of controversies around how it's been communicated, because the communication has been so, a certain part of our industry has taken this as a, yeah, we were right. Yeah, all horses are better off barefoot. And some farriers have found that offensive, so I'll talk a bit about that. And also how I will approach barefoot trimming and the concept there in my business and what I think is the future here in the end. See? What? There we go. I think. Yeah. Peder Fredriksson, he is an Olympic level show jumping rider. And he wanted to get some proper quantitative data. Well, what is Barefoot doing with the performance of his horses? He was basing things on his feeling and also, sorry. That was me. Okay, let's skip to this. That's all right. This is a film that the insurance company Algea that funded this research made, just to illustrate what we were doing. It's not very often you see me clench up, but you see this in the video, so it's an evidence that I actually can do it. I have helpers to do that. In my son, which is working for me now, we said like, yeah, we got it on video that you can clench. I've never seen you do that before, he said. This is Peder, one of the vets involved, and you can see all of these markers on the horse. It's about 50 of them, and all of them collects data. The rig we're going to see later on. They spend a lot of time just to get the markers to be in one place, not to fall off. You can see up there in the ceiling is a big rig, I think it was about 30 cameras, filming from all kinds of different angles. This was a crew on about 20 people altogether. It was pretty big. It cost about $300,000. And I don't know how many millions of data they collected there. It was a massive number. We shot 8 horses, and we had a mixed. It was 8 horses that were shot, they were trimmed. And some of them, they were trimmed, they were measured when they're without shoes first, and they measured with shoes afterwards. And one group did it the other way around. And that was purely logistics. But now we only had 8 horses. That meant that this was purely, you need a lot more horses to make it, call it proper research. So they call it a pilot project. We didn't do any recordings of or documentation of the condition of the foot, because there was a small group of horses and a big variation from about size number 4 to size 0. There were narrow feet. There were feet that had a lot to trim off, and there was some had nothing to trim off. So we didn't do that assessment, because it wasn't really that interesting either, because the only thing we're going to measure here is actually the biomechanics, how it's moving, not health issues. There will be assumptions further on in the research. They were ridden by 4 different riders, also in a bit random order, but they all knew the horses, so they were not like the rider or the horse were new to each other. Another thing that's important to know is they were all used to be ridden barefoot. There were no horses we just pull the shoes off and they measure it. That wouldn't be fair at all. So they were used to it. So what was really exciting is how do they react to the added length and weight in the shoe, since they were not used to it. And I think they reacted pretty good actually. Where no one was saying that, oh, my horse is so unbalanced now because he got shoes on. They did the exact thing in the exact same effort from a rider's perspective. Yeah, see the numbers here of the scale of the whole, how they measured it was massive. Done on 5%, which is important to know because we believe that a lot of biomechanics in a horse changes after the surface. Obviously, it's different to ride on concrete and grass or on this 5%. But it's good is very much standardized. Lars Robstock, which is the professor behind the whole thing, his job is partly to travel around the world and measure and quantify the different surfaces on the FAE competitions show jumping all over the world. So he knows his surfaces. So I wouldn't ask any questions really, or sorry, to question the quality of that. And they were, as you see here, they were warmed up, trotted. It was basically measuring a normal training exercise for horses. Nothing special, nothing extreme, not at all. So, why are you not responding? Can you just shift it for me, please? Thank you. I made a shoeing protocol for this to document. Well, first of all, I want to say, normally, if you read a lot of research on shoeing, sometimes the farrier is not even mentioned. Not that it's not mentioned how it was shot, how it was trimmed in a lot of research. It doesn't seem like the professional researchers is that interested actually in what we're doing or who's doing it and if we have any thoughts or protocols behind it. So it's actually the rider, Per there, that he requested, very much, that he wanted a farrier with certain experience to join the project because he knew that there's going to be controversies here. So he wanted a farrier that had a certain experience and can explain it and also document what he was doing. So then he got me in there. It wasn't like the professors, they weren't used to that idea that, okay, it also needs to be a certain type of farrier to do it. So I told them, when we were doing it, I said, it's pretty amazing. I never had a 20-person crew with a $300,000 budget to measure my job. Think about that. That is massive, isn't it? It's quite humbling. But it was good fun. So I said, it's a protocol here. I'm not going to read through it all. But it's pretty simple. We know that in the barefoot part of this industry, there is a lot of people that is making their own trimming protocols, which is basically hoof mapping techniques. The same in the farriery, we have a lot of hoof mapping methods, hoof mapping techniques. I'm not a great believer in that. I'm a great believer in reading the foot and understanding results. And if you understand the biomechanics behind the foot and the anatomy behind the foot, you don't really need a guideline saying 50-50 or 60-40 or take the toe off and the heels down or all that. It's pretty simple. It's not very hard. So I looked at the worshipper company's definitions of trimming. I looked at the AFA standards. I looked at some other colleagues of mine that I find very inspiring in their thesis and how they describe their trimming protocols. But that didn't make me change my trimming. It was just to help out with the definitions. And in short, what I wanted is, I wanted it to stand pretty straight. I wanted it to be the toe axis from front to be straight, from the side to be straight, and I wanted symmetry in the foot. Like the sole surface to be symmetrical, as symmetrical as you can get on that horse. Some of them were pretty well built, some of them were not. Then we walked and trotted them up, and what we were after was even landing and an even loading, like a level landing, flat landing, and even loading. I was the only one that actually was caring about if the horses were lame or not. The research program, I didn't seem to care about that at all. Because that was not in their parameter. Researchers, they're pretty, I'm amazed at it. They're super clever people, but they don't think very much outside the box, they don't. And they're not always very practical people. Well, they probably think that I'm a bit dumb, so it goes both ways. But I can live with that. So I stick to pretty, what I would say, normal shearing protocol, and I stayed away. This definition protocol, they're available if you want to read it later. I'll send it to you if you're interested in it. I showed it to a few people involved in the barefoot, only barefoot part of the industry, and I haven't had any particular comments on it. They always think like, okay, no, this is all right. Nothing controversial in it. Pretty standard, good solid trimming, flat landing, even loading, round off, not more. Like I want to keep maybe what could be a little bit controversy towards the barefoot methods. I call it methods because they're not really strategies, they're more like a method. They want to put things in a box. Is that I would like the hoof wall to be the primary contact to the surface. I think it's very reasonable or very important to have load sharing, which both Derek and Danny touched. So I'm not against that, but I want the primary, and that basically means that I don't want sole pressure when you lift it up. When you're loading the foot, the sole will come down, and the frog needs to be in contact when it's loading. If you have it up there and that is completely flat to the ground, you will overload the frog. Then you don't want, in my opinion, you don't have load sharing. You have more load on the frog and on the sole. Have that, but not much. I think my definition in this here is 1.5 millimeter, which is how much in inches? An eighth of an inch or something like that. On there. So, and dressing the hoof wall, I don't like in general overdressing the hoof wall because I think that if you dress it too much, it will be you weaken the wall more than you strengthen it. So if you want to correct the flare, I'm pretty conservative. Depending on where the flare is, I'm pretty conservative with that. I trim the heels down to, or is it like what's it called? Because this is a bit tricky again, because there's some misunderstandings. I trim the heels down to the widest and highest part of the frog. Some people want to trim it back to the widest part of the frog. That will result in a broken back hoof pass and axis and a negative or neutral palmar angle, which I don't think is beneficial for the horse, which we can talk a lot more about in another lecture. So, remove flares, not more than half the wall thickness. So, no over-rasping, no nothing. Roll the wall. I made a bit more in the toe than on the sides. There, no, that's too much. Can you go back, please? There. Then shot them. And I shot them with a normal mustard Libro, 22x8 on all of them. That was not always proportionate to the size of the horse. As I said, it was from a 4 to size 4 to a size 0. So obviously proportionate, that would be a lighter type of shoe for the big horses and heavier for the smaller horses. So how that will affect the result, I don't know, but this is still a small study. So I needed to keep in, instead of like be very proportionate section to size, I stick to 22x8. I fit it to the widest part of the frog. Section, heels in the middle of the section, or or to create symmetry. So sometimes if it was asymmetrical, I fit it a little bit wider. Never more than half the thickness of the hoof of the toe wall. I set it back, not more than that. But I didn't put any break over, didn't grind off anything. It was flat and square in the toe, and that's important. And we're going to talk about that later because I think that will actually affected some of the results we got. So, clenching, normal standard clenching, 1/3, 6 nails. Not behind the widest part, rock. So this is all very standard, isn't it? This is what you want to see in a competition. I've been competing, going to farrier competitions my first one was in '94, and I competed until just before the pandemic in 2019. So everything I do farrier-wise will be within that standard. So there's nothing special here, nothing, not at all. If you're used to competitions, you will recognize that as my shoeing there. Pretty standard, nice fits, maybe not the best finish in the world, but okay, good enough. Because, but I even said dressing and sanding, yeah, I had another one to sand it, but never mind. So, what are we looking on here? This is one example of what this looks like, the animation here, in the program. If you watch the right four there, with the arrows on it, this one measures two things. That is the movement of the heels compared to each other, both expansion and flexion. And it also measures the position of the hoof, so how much it flexes and how much it goes around how they define it, the hoof's axis. So you can see this. And the length of the arrows, that shows how much movement it is, and so on and so on. And they do this on all 50 markers on all horse. So imagine the amount of data. They can use this research 10 years with a team of people analyzing it. I think this, when you start to understand it, this is pretty cool. What they measured here is the expansion of the foot. Heel to heel, between the heels, just the expansion. We're going to look at the graphs for that just later on. There's loads of results, but don't worry about it. I'm not good at graphs or anything like that. I'm not that clever. So I'm just using this just to show the example of what it actually was, okay? So if there's anyone that want more details, I can put you in contact with Lars, the professor, and he can talk for hours and days and weeks about this. And it's pretty good as well. I would recommend him. If you can go to a lecture with him, you should go. But back to this, the heel expansion. And in short, they expand more when there's no shoe there. Wow, now you're surprised, aren't you? Everyone knew that. About 50% more without a shoe and with shoe. So it's a bit. It's not massive, but it's a bit. What's also interesting is I saw that the foot actually also retracts when it's breaking over, retracts, and also in full extension of the foot just before it lands, it actually retracts a little bit. It's as the foot prepares itself to land and expand. I thought that was pretty cool. There's also loads of, I'm not going to show so you can go to the next one. That's one foot. Here should be another one. We'll start in a second. This is without shoes. Sorry, this is with shoes, I believe. The deflection, they also measure that, and that was a lot. It really restricts deflection. So that tells us maybe not expansion is the thing to worry about. It's deflection, and that's important. It's really important to know what we're doing, where we're restricting the foot a lot with the shoe. And I'm not saying bad or good here, because sometimes you actually want to stabilize the foot. That's why we're using bar shoes and hard bars and all of that very often, to stabilize the foot. But it also has consequences, of course. So here's the graphs. And top one there, that is how much it expands without the shoe, and bottom one is obviously with shoe. You can see that, it's a difference, it's significant. 50% in research, that's significant. But still, it's not like it's zero, it's locking the foot completely. But this also got to do with, I believe this also got to do with, obviously variations, because there were huge variations as well, type of foot, but also how you're shoeing. Not nailing too far back, fitting wide, fitting full, all of these things. And also that I try to obtain frog contact, but obviously that is harder when you're lifting the foot 8 millimeters off the ground. But these were horses that was barefoot, so the horse, after me trimming down the heels, I normally trim down the heels about 8 millimeters and then put the shoe on. So most of them had pretty good frog contact to start with. Because that's what happens in there when you leave them barefoot, is that you get almost a little knob back in the heel there. So to make the shoe lay flat on the hoof, you just take that little bit off. So in reality, I don't think I lifted the foot that much off the ground compared to compared to the frog contact. So, and also part of the, and I wasn't involved in this, it's a pretty picture, isn't it? Part of the research was also interviews with trainers, farriers, and vets, riders. And what I basically found out, I wasn't part of this part of the research, but it was that there was very little experience with it, and it was not a lot, they couldn't find a lot of research. Most people, they were skeptical, and if they tried it, they said that it was huge individual differences with which horses that functioned without shoes or not. So, it's not very much included in the results and the preliminary reports I read so far. So I don't know really what they got out of it, but I'm looking forward to read more about that later on. No, come on. Where is there's Lee. I thought I charged it. Could you help me out, please? Yeah. By the way, we can have a little break there. Is there any questions? Oh, my God. The gentleman.
Was the study done on synthetic sand? It said synthetic footing?
Yeah.
Was there done on any other footing or just the synthetic footing?
No, just that. Okay. Now, that's a very important point. So that's what we don't. We don't know a lot about how it works on other things. It's just that. But I think the reason why that was done is because that's what these horses work on. Since everything is linked into the performance of the show jumper, not general horses. If I like it, I don't run a lot on it. I think if you use it, it's two things you need to do. Think about if you have a lot of that, if you train a lot on synthetics, is that you can't train on it every day. But you have to train on it because you're going to compete on it. So a horse needs to know what it is. But if you train just on that, you will have problems because it's kind of too even, and the horse needs to work on different surfaces, both harder, more uneven, and even softer to prevent injuries, because you will overload. And also, it's also down to very much how they maintain it, because if they don't maintain it in the right way, they can have some pretty serious injuries on it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Good.
So when you're talking about hoof flexion, are you just talking about the heels or the whole hoof capsule?
No, even since the heels are connected to the rest of the hoof capsule, is obviously the whole hoof capsule. But where they measured was right there. You saw them too. You see later on. You saw where there was one little ball globe on each one. That's where they measured it. So that's why they know. They don't know how far forward or anything. That's why I know. But since it's connected, I assume it's the whole here.
Axel, I think it's amazing. One big question to you is that, do you think the weight of the shoe is creating, if you looked at the arrow flying up, the weight is creating more of a fulcrum? Does a different weighted shoe make the same effect?
Yep.
Does the hoof pattern angle make a different angle effect as well?
Yep, 100%. I think when you put a shoe on, we saw that it sinks in a little bit more, probably because of frog and sole contact is less. And in full extension, it also flexed up more. And I think this is just physics. It's like, it's heavier.
Fulcrum effect.
Yeah.
Another question is, do you think that little extra 50% expansion and contraction is helping the hemodynamics and the barefoot, that's actually helping the horse long term as well?
We can't back that up. I'm not sure if you can back it up 100% with scientific data. If anyone say I'm wrong on that, please show me that research. But I would assume so. But I think that frog and sole contact, load sharing, is just as important to the blood supply and the circulation. So I don't think it's one thing. I don't think that is the only thing. But I think that's part of it, obviously. Yeah.
Hi, I assume your heel markers and your toe markers were parallel with the ground on a hard surface?
Come again?
The heel marker and the toe marker, same distance from the ground surface?
No.
They were not?
No. They didn't measure that. No, they measured how they were related to each other, not how it was related to the ground. If that makes sense.
You mentioned the contraction and the dorsal aspect. Did you notice a difference between the shod and barefoot horses in the contraction?
In the contraction, you know what? I forgot to ask that question, but I'll make a note of that. Honestly. All right, should we move on? Well, let's move, one more and then we move on, cool. The gentleman right there.
Is this implying that the free and larger internal movement of the hoof is beneficial or positive? Or is it just saying that it happens?
It happens.
Or it's not necessarily indicating more stress or?
No. And that is central to all of this. What that thing there, because it's been used and misused so much to say, oh, it's better for the horse, barefoot is better. That media all over it, barefoot is better. It does not say better. It says this is what happens. We don't know anything about how it loads structures, and if it's good or bad. Like maybe it's good that it flexes more. Maybe it shouldn't expand more. Some cases it shouldn't expand. It should be more restricted. So, but it's only saying what you say there, what we know. That's it. What happens? Okay. There you are. There we are. Yep. That's why I went through, wasn't it? Apart from duty factor and stride frequency increased. Okay? Because that is performance. And that means, in short, duty factor means the longer the foot is on the ground compared to how much is in the air. And what do we want? In show jumping and racing, we want contact with the ground because that's where the energy is transferred. That's the energy to move the horse forward. contact with the ground. And it also enabled the horse to move with a higher frequency. When you're jumping between fences, maybe you have 4 gallop strides, yeah? And you cannot put in more. You want to just make them faster. Does that make sense? And these made them faster and being on the ground more, which increased performance for show jumpers. But would that be good for a dressage horse? What do you think? No one thinks, it's like, if the foot is more on the ground than in the air, what does that mean? In dressage, that we call it a less active stride. In dressage, you want an active stride. So that's what you can say, like, in theory, you can say, this will not enhance performance on a dressage horse. Maybe it will, because maybe the horse is more comfortable over time, less injuries over time. But I would say, I assume that this is good for horses that needs energy to move fast forward and jump high, not necessarily ones that want to show off a certain type of stride. So gaited horses and dressage horses might not benefit from not being shod. Any questions about this one? Because that is central for performance. Did you get it? Everyone? Cool. I just want to ask you one question before I go further. Are there any barefoot trimmers here? One? Just one? Seriously? Yeah, but he's just doing barefoot trimming. You know what I mean? We got one there? Just one? That's a bit disappointing. Should be a lot more, maybe, yeah. I had a very nice experience with barefoot trimmers. In Sweden, they organized the first ever national championship in barefoot trimming. And they asked me to judge it. A farrier. Oh, come on. But I thought it was pretty cool. So I said yes, and I got a lot of negative response from both barefoot trimmers and farriers. Because farriers are like, oh, you're a complete sellout, oh, you're only going to be barefoot trimmer now, and you're going to promote them. And that was what the farrier said. And the barefoot trimmer said, oh no, we can't use Askel, he's promoting shoes all the time, he works for a huge shoe company, and I can't use him. So, but it kind of quieted down a bit. So I went to do it, and it was very interesting. Because what, like, how can I put this without sounding too offensive? But a lot of the things I thought about barefoot trimmers is absolutely true. I'm not going to go in detail, but yeah, it was like that. But then again, like, okay, that's how they are. That's a certain type of people that seems to be drawn to what we call alternative things, and it is still alternative. The worship for company of farriers has been around since 1364, isn't it? Something like that? Do you guys know how old it is? Fairly around there. I think the barefoot movement as we know it now has been there for about 25 years. So yeah.
99.
Yeah, 24 then, sorry. So obviously, they have a bit of catching up to do. So we have to bear with them. They were not really into tools. So it's not going to be a big market for you there, Jim, sorry. I went around before the competition and looked at the tools and the knives, and like, my God, there's like some of them nice that were not, and they were going to compete with them, and they were not sharper than a spoon, really. So, but they had trade stands there, and they had loads of products. They could have like 50 different feeds and creams and everything looks so nice. It looks like going into a pharmacy. It was really good, and they had one rasp. So for me, that was like, wow, very different experience there. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it was organized, this competition, because I'm used to farrier competitions. As I said, I've been competing for many years, nearly 30 years since my first competition. I've also been judging for about 20 years. So I think I know this bit, this format that we're competing in, and I like it, I love it. But they chose another format. They started off with an anatomy quiz. And they the group of nine trimmers started an anatomy quiz, and it started fairly easy, and it went harder and harder. And so it functioned this way, so if you answer wrong, you were out. And they ended up with, I believe it was 3, they wanted 3 in the end. And because it was a final there, and I'm going to get to that later on. And the next round was trimming on a dead leg. And thank God for that. Yeah, we're laughing, we laugh at it, but it was, I think there was some of them that were so nervous, they never competed in their life. If anyone, you compete here, remember the first time you ever competed, you're really nervous, but they still did it. They were so passionate about it. They really wanted to show this and do this, and saw this an opportunity to improve, like we do. It's like the same things that drive us to compete, it's driving them to compete. So I shouldn't really make fun of them, but I'm just telling you how it was. So we started there, but here's the thing, they had 2 minutes before to give me a trimming plan, tell them what I saw, and they went into so much detail you wouldn't believe it. It's like when we compete as farriers, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna take the heels to there. What do you think? Yeah, cool. Move on. And even afterwards, they would tell me they had 2 minutes to explain what I did and what goals they felt they reached and what they didn't. And that was also very interesting, how they could talk. I'm so glad that they were limited to 2 minutes, because they could go on for hours. I see, yeah. Yeah, we'll get to this later on. So, out of the 9 and the anatomy quiz, the 3 best, they went on to live shoeing. So we have 3 horses in the live, not shoeing, sorry, live trimming. And it happened like this, it was like they had 45 minutes before the class to assess the horse. And they trotted it, 45 minutes was a long time. But what I didn't realize, I said, do we really need that much time? Give them 10 minutes, let's get on with it, get on with it, get on with it. It takes too much time. But what I didn't realize, they were also going to be judged on how they communicated with the owner. Imagine that, if we're going to be, as farriers, going to be judged on how we communicate with the owners. That could be interesting. So, they put that into it, and yeah, it was interesting. They were good at it. They talked and communicate, even about emotions and stuff. Come on. So after that, they gave us a trimming plan, and they would execute that. Trim the horse. Afterwards, trotted it up. They told me what they done and why and what they saw and all of that, and we put a score on this. And I must say, it wasn't bad. It was good. It was good, solid trims. It wasn't all pretty because their tools weren't great, but they didn't like that. The winner there, she really improved the horse. She didn't really say the right things and all of that, in my opinion, but the horse got better. So I thought it was a very interesting experience. And what can we take from this? What are I would say, as far as, and I'm not generalizing now, okay? I would say, what is our industry weak point towards there? Where are they better than us? They're better at selling products, which I'm not a big fan of anyway, but they are also better at communicating with the owners. They're a lot better at that. I'm not saying maybe we're going to go all the way down that lane, but I think we have a lot to learn about how they communicate with owners. And they are knowledgeable on things that we are weak on. For example, nutrition. Now, how much do you, farriers here, how much do you know about nutrition? How much advice can you give to your owner about nutrition? Yeah, if the horse is fat, feed it less. That's about what we can. And they know things about that. With nutrition, they know like more about the anatomy, I would say in general. And especially this communication, how they communicate. But this is also a certain group of people, they're customers. There are actually customers that want that. I have customers that absolutely do not want to communicate with me. They want to pay the bill. That's it. Do not talk, here's your tea. I'm off. But we can learn that. And I think that's, especially nutrition and communication should be more integrated in our educations, even exams. I think that'll help us a lot. Anyway, let's move on. The reason why Peder, here we go, Peder Fredriksson. The reason why he started on this endeavor was not because he had an epiphany or anything. It was just because he had a horse that was lame from a suspensory injury. He left it out for 6 months without shoes on. He took it back in, started riding it. He didn't shoe it before he started riding it, and he said it was so much better. First of all, the injury was gone, which no vet has managed to treat, or at least didn't affect the horse. And he thought just the horse functioned a lot better. It felt better. So he carried on riding it, and this horse had really, really nice feet. Strong feet, nice feet. So he just carried on doing that. He had his farrier to trim it, normal trim, and just carried on. And then he said, oh, yeah, why not try this on other horses? And he did that, and some were more successful than others with it, and then that's how he started. And then he started to be really interested in like, why is it, and how I do it. And also, a major thing in this here is that you need to have like a maintenance trim all the time, like every week. You have to, the rider has to be there with a rasp to take off flares, if it's like cracks a bit, maintenance. And you also have to very often reduce the trimming cycles as well. If you're normally shoeing the horse every 6 weeks, you have to trim it probably every 4 weeks. And it's not because you're growing long, it's because the smallest, since the foot is not protected, this should be very evident, self-evident, shouldn't it? Since it's not protected, it's not only growing, it's also growing unbalance, it's also wearing unbalance, so every unbalance gets magnified. So if it's not, confirmation is not good, every problem gets magnified. Since we don't have a shoe to protect it. So you have to be a lot more on it. But it's also a question here, as I said, the second point there is not ideal shoeing. And this is a question because like, why did it, and I wasn't a farrier at the time, and I'm not saying anything wrong about that farrier because I know he's a very, very accomplished farrier, but so it's not really for this example. But if a horse functions better without shoes, is that because of the shoes, or is it because it's not shod optimal? I think that is a very central question here. That if it's not working with the shoeing, should we then try to adjust the shoeing so it fits that horse better, or should we just take the shoes off? I think we should just adjust the shoe and look at the shoeing a lot more before the solution is to take them off. This is a thought. But the rider feels the difference, he really did. And you also got to remember that here we have a rider, he lost an Olympic gold medal on, I believe it was 0.12 of a second. Yeah. So he's got that numbers in his head. So if he can gain that, ride 0.2 seconds faster in his head, he is the best in the world. So if that means to take off the shoes, he'll take off the shoes. He'll do anything for it. So remember that, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about necessarily better health, or we're talking about split seconds. That's what we're talking about. But still it's important. And we still can learn about it and learn the effect of what we're doing in a system like this, but also always have to remember that when one of our more happy hackers is asking, oh, I think that maybe I will take the shoes off because it's better, isn't it? Like, all the top riders, they're riding without shoes now. Saying, yeah, but you're really not at that level maybe. But that's what you need to do. But a few other things like exercise your horse maybe, or even exercise yourself. Was that rude? I said that to a customer once. It was very late in the day. I think it was a very, very bad weather as well. And she asked me, so yeah, it's keep touching. It's always touching the poles, knocking the poles down, and it keeps doing that. So I was like, have you got any shoes that we can put on to make it not touch the poles? Yeah. I said, yeah, there is, yeah. They're called trainers, I said. So what do you mean trainers? Can I get trainers for my horse? No, for you. Fat ass. I don't shoot for her anymore. I think she quit riding. And not because of me, I hope, but anyway, yep. Maintenance and managing. 45-week extremist cycle by Faria. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. A lot of barefoot trimmers, they think that, oh yeah, now we can do the job. Because he's doing it, he's doing barefoots, and that works so well. So now the barefoot trimmers, they should have the rightful place. He is using farriers. He's using me, and he has another farrier. He's never used a barefoot trimmer. He had one in there for one day, and then she never came back. You have to clean for gravel every day. Gravel is a big, huge problem. Small rocks everywhere, and they need to go out. Stay there, you're in trouble. Check chip and flares every day. The grooms, they're after it every day. They also wear boots. They never go out riding without boots on. Almost never. Some horses can do, but then you have to manage that to see, okay, he wears a bit much now, or then you have to put them on. When they're competing, then we're trimming them there. We know how each horse functions, which angles and all of that, how much foot it needs to perform perfect. He wears boots. He doesn't go 100 yards on tarmac without boots on. Not a chance. Boots are essential in this. I'm going to get back to that later. And weekly managing. And also radiographs. And to start with, we used radiographs a lot to figure out what is ideal for each horse. And I used that in a discussion with the rider, because like Peter is very much involved in this, and he's very specific, and he's there with me looking at each foot when I'm trimming every time, like this. Or maybe, what do you think? Should you? Why is that? Why does it look like that? Maybe should you? So it's quite. Yeah, it can be a bit draining, but most of the time, very often, I find him right. Even though I don't always agree with him to start with. So yeah, got a fair point there. And we did X-rays of him, and it was this horse. It was his best horse, called All In, Alan. He'd been competing in 2 Olympics. This horse, and it was that first horse he started doing barefoot, so he knew this pretty well. So they knew this horse pretty well, and like I was doing, like shaping up the hind feet, flares in. This horse flared quite a bit. and he didn't like it. So then Perry said, no, I want you to take the outer side, the medial, no, the lateral side more in, like leave that medial side. I said, no, that's going to create two left hind feet. We don't want that. We want it more like that. And he said, no, trust me, it works better. So I got the vet, because I didn't agree with him, and now I'm going to tell him, I'm going to show him. So I got the vet in, took skyline radiographs of it, and he was right. It had two left coffin on this horse. So it just makes you a bit humble. Should make me a little bit more humble. I don't know if I am, but it's a reminder that it's not everything we see from the outside that we assume from our experience and training as farriers that is actually right. We are shooing for the man on the top. We're not shooting for us that we should think that this looks pleasant and nice and right according to our training. We're shooting for the guy on the top. If he's happy, or her, we should be happy. So we did yearly radiographs also to find out where the horse is, what kind of plantar angle it likes. And I can see in general, I haven't done any statistics on it, but most of them, when they were performing very well, they were about 2 to 4 degrees positive, sometimes a little bit lower on the hinds. It's harder to maintain a positive angle on the hinds without shoes, I feel. So, and also in millimeters, the sole depth from the tip of the P3 and to the ground level was typically around 16, 17 millimeters, which is quite short. So you don't want it to be any less than that, and that's why when we find them to perform very well, it needed to be protected because they were quite short. So you couldn't go more, but in training, if they were a bit longer, didn't seem to mind. It seems to live as, there you go, yeah. Well, they do need shoes. These are not full-time barefoot horses, they're short. But he normally takes the shoes off as soon as they come into his yard, shoes goes off. I've been told that the transition time should be about 6 to 8 weeks. Would that make sense to you? That you need to give the horse about 6 to 8 weeks to adjust to going barefoot. What do you say, Derek? Yeah? Around there? This guy, 6 to 8 hours before he's on top of them. He's very impatient. They need to function now. So obviously that could be a challenge for us farriers to both, first of all, explain to him that this horse, if you ride it now, you won't be happy. But I am surprised as well, like how soon after taking shoes off, he gets them to function. But if that got to do a lot about how balanced rider is, how much he can compensate for things, I don't know. So I wouldn't recommend it. But that's how it works there. You just put shoes off, up, no worries, I'll ride it. So, but anyway, when you compete on grass, you need traction. At that level, anyway, if you don't have shoes on, you don't have traction, extra traction, you can't ride for speed. You have to adjust your riding. And he doesn't, because he needs them 0.2 seconds. So the shoes needs to be light. We hardly ever shoe them with normal 8mm shoes. They're like either very light steel shoes, aluminum shoes, or plastic shoes. Very often we find them perform better when the shoes are flexible. So plastic shoes is good. We try different ways of shoe flexible. I'm going to touch that later on. If you can obtain a tight fit is important. because we don't want a full fit, because they're going to go turns. So fit tight. Talk for an hour now. I'm not even half finished. Oh my God. I'll wait into that. When you're doing turns, it makes sense, doesn't it? If you have a full fit, we should have not like cut the quarters, but if you have a large fit outside, you create more leverage, more stress on the joints and the ligaments, and the rider can feel that. So, bit tight, chamfer off to reduce leverage when it turns as well, not just break over forward, but also to the side. Omnidirectional reduction of leverage. Front contact, thin shoes, or shoes that penetrates. Essential. I don't have to talk a lot about frog loading, do I, Derek? You did that yesterday. And Danny. We've been experimenting a lot about placement of the stud holes, where he's better and where he's not, and there's a bit variation, but we kind of discovered a pattern. So they're using plastic. We've been nailing on a lot. I think we are going to go into glues. Peter's been a bit not too happy with glues because he had some bad experience with it. The other shoe's been falling off. The plastic been on for too long, so it's been rot behind it. But which I mean is basically due with the procedure has been followed. And I said aluminium there as well, yeah. And of course boots. Boots. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No. I say we've been experimenting, and that very well spotted. Thanks, Jim. I forgot to say that. The reason why I moved that forward is because this horse hitting itself in the elbows. So if the stud was too far back, it like punched itself in the elbow, really bad. So this was, and you can see that's why he's holding the foot up to see where is the distance from elbow to the heel. So this was experimented to find out how far back we could go and how far forward we could go. This was too far forward. Horse didn't like it. Yeah. So correct, but it just goes to show that we were experimenting with. Another thing, you can see the one with 3 stud holes in there, where we had a small stud in the outside toe. And that makes sense, doesn't it? When you go in the turns, you want to have contact there. But what we didn't think about that, it should have that on the inside as well when it comes to the next foot. So now we're using 4 stud holes, also on the inside toe. And that gives the horse an edge better, like it really works. More and smaller studs. Yeah. Yeah, not very much, but if you go down size on the studs, you don't need to put them that far in. If you put them too far in, you won't have that grip. But we're using quite fairly small ones. But obviously, it does adapt. We try to adapt that to the surface they're working on. If it's a rainy day, you're going to have bigger studs, obviously. Things we tried. We tried split toe. Didn't work very well. I think we need more clips on it than we tried. We tried with 8 studs as well. That was too much. That was the style of shoe that he used in the European, I think maybe it was that shoe actually, used in the European Championships, I'd say 2021 something. This is like 520. This very light shoe. Functioned all right because it got a lot of grip in it. European Championship was in Germany and it was on grass. But it's a bit much. We used a racer shoe, couldn't make them stay on. We used some thermoplastic shoe, they cracked. We put on like polyurethane, that fell off. You can use it for one class maybe. Or like tops one show if it was a bit sore. We don't use that anymore. We don't feel like I think we figured out the trimming a bit more and when to put on shoes in training and how to use boots. We don't need that. We tried the hoof casts. He went through that in 2 days. So a few of the things we tried that didn't really work. There. 4, the futures. Is what I'm thinking about the future. I think like anything we do in for the future needs to be loading the frog, not overloading the heel. No matter what we do, it's got to be something that accommodates with that. I think we're going to have a different profile. I think we're going to think about weight a lot more. I think we're going to get into, now we're talking top level here, right? I think that we're going to create boots that is better than the boots today. Better in a way that they are slimmer, they fit tighter. This hassle, new designs. I think that's going to be the future. I've also been experimenting I've been using 3D scanning. That we scan 3D and send that to a company that makes a custom fitted plastic shoe or aluminum shoe, whatever, do that, where we can design specific features in a program for that horse. I think that's the future, but I think that's just very, at a certain level. It's more expensive, but it's not as expensive as you think. And the technology is developing so fast. The things that's on the market is working now, but the things they're working on is a lot better and a lot faster. So I think we just going to start on this. It is a revolution, definitely. Business model. I want to say a little bit about that because we think, at least in the area I live, we think that the barefoot trimmers, they charge more. They make more money because they charge more for a trim than a normal farrier would do. But the fact is that they spend a lot more time talking to the owner. So in the end of the day, there's that. I asked a lot of, interviewed a little bit the barefoot trimmers, how many horses they trimmed a day. Others said, most of them said, on a good day, if they were really working hard, they trimmed 5 horses. How would that work in your old business, Jim? If you send out an apprentice and he did 5 trims in a day, would you be happy? No. So obviously they charge a bit more, but even if they charge double what a normal, call it farrier trim would be, they're still not going to make money on it at all. So they're not really good business people, apart from they're good at communication and selling their ideas and also selling products. So we should maybe also look at more like recommending or selling products also as a service for the customer. They want it, they're willing to pay for it, most of them. So I think we as farriers, if you don't already do it, you should have products available for the things you find. If you find thrush, you've got to have a thrush treatment plan with products. If the owner wants to have hoof oil, you're going to have the best hoof oil in your room. If it needs special nutrition, you're going to have the nutrition that you recommend. It's a service, they want it. And they're willing to pay more for it because you have it in the van than it would be to buy it online. I promise you. I'm not very good at it, but I should be better at it to make money. Also, we need to calculate a bit more time. What I've been doing in the late years, which has made a bit different for my business, is that, but this is a certain type of clientele as well, is that I tell them, you pay me for the day. And that could be one horse trimmed in one day. Because they just want me there, and not just to trim, they want me there to talk to the vet, to chop the horse up, look at it as ridden, all of these things, my knowledge, that's what I want. And I don't care if that takes the whole day for that and they have to pay for my whole day, so I have a day rate. So a lot of these jobs here, I can go out and I get paid full for what I would do on a normal day, going out shoeing, and a bit more, and I don't have to do that much. So for me physically is a better deal. So when we're going to do trims in the future, if we're going to get into that market, we basically have to give the owner a better service, and we have to spend time, and we have to think about time when we're charging them. Because the physical work is not that hard, especially if they trim, there's barefoot trims, there's nothing to do there. And we feel, my God, I almost feel bad charging $50 for this, like, done. But we shouldn't, because they want us to take time to assess the horse. And that's what we need to better at. Assess the horse and charge for it. And it's better on the body, and if we do it the right way, it's better for business. So, any questions?
Do you think there's more revenue generated in the world in the equine industry from lameness or from soundness?
Definitely lameness, yes. Jim? Yeah. If vets makes more money than farriers.
This is more an observation than a question. I've been using frog engagement pads, okay, on horses that I thought were flat-footed, needed some help. Almost every one of those horses, the owner has said they perform and feel better. So, can we, from that observation, presume that our regular everyday shoeing does not bring out the optimal performance of a horse? I think it does. I think there are 90% of those horses out there that are underperforming but not lame. And we're not realizing that potential of improved performance by taking a different approach to our horseshoeing.
I would say thank you, Jim, for summing up my whole lecture. That's why, yeah.
Sorry.
100%.
you can go now then.
You just come up here and just wrap this up for me.
I did.
No, but that is exactly the point.
Well, that's my observation of the last probably 10 years.
Yeah.
I've rethought. I have never, and I said this to Marilyn McLean yesterday. I've been shoeing for 52 years. Only in the last 10 years have I realised the importance of frog engagement. 100%. I've gone with a pair of blinkers for 40 years.
Yep. It's so true. And we tend to put on, especially UK, where you're using concave, which is a higher section. Is that thinner shoes? If you're going to shoe, find the thinnest shoe you can. Don't care if it wears out the shoe. It's not the point. Put some pins in them. Try to figure out how you can engage the frog. And I'm talking about before it's actually underperforming and before getting lame. When it's start underperforming and like really deteriorate the foot, then you have to use a product and a shoeing package. And do it sooner rather than later. Just do it, because if the heels collapse, it needs frog engagement. Easy as that. Come in. Yeah, exactly. Let's put it this way. I believe that some feeds can cope with it with less frog engagement over a certain time. They can cope with it. They're not performing optimal. They will normally break at some point, but they are strong enough to cope with it. And do we want the horses to cope with our practice, or do we want them to thrive with it? Yeah. Yep. and the environment.
When you shoe these horses, do you shoe them for a whole cycle? In other words, they're going barefoot. You put the shoes on for the show conditions. Do you then just take them off, or do you leave them on for a full cycle?
Excellent question. These are horses that travel all over the world. He can change his mind of where he's going, and we shows he's going in split of a second. I can have him call me in the morning, and he's going to compete on one continent next weekend, and in the evening he's saying, sorry, yeah, I'm going to Calgary now, or Dubai, or whatever. So to follow that schedule 100% is very, very hard. So sometimes we shoot them for 4 weeks. 4 weeks is normally maximum if they are performing. But sometimes it's just for that weekend off, and it's also down to what surface they're going to compete on. Because if you compete on grass, you have to keep them in shoes. If they compete in grass one weekend and they're not going to compete for a while, they go off.
Would you expect if you had, so in the expansion, 50% more barefoot, if you had shod with frog engagement, what would you expect that number to be? Similar to barefoot or similar to shod, in between? What would your guess be?
My guess would be that is when we nail on the 8mm shoe, that's what restricts the foot. But it might be when you have frog engagement that it does a bit more. But is more better? I don't know.
So this year at the World Cup, Henrik von Eckermann, the #1 show jumper in the world, currently the #1 show jumper in the world, rides King Henry. Is it King Henry is his horse's name?
Yeah.
Anyway, he's been unstoppable for quite some time now, barefoot, right? So got to talk to him about barefoot, and after the Olympics, and they'd won the gold, and all the publicity about horses being barefoot and how that's going to be the new thing in show jumping. It was interesting to ask Henrik himself about that, and he had a lot to say about King Henry, and his feet looked absolutely beautiful. I mean, it was amazing how I couldn't believe how short they were, and he was obviously quite sound. I mean, if I trimmed a horse that short, he would limp for sure, right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, I asked him, I said, so then all your horses must be barefoot? And he said, oh, absolutely not. Not every horse can go barefoot.
Nope.
And that was like, but none of that got published.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do a bit of myth busting around that, because see, I got in this presentation, probably got more pictures of shoes than barefoot. So you're right. Yeah, I went to see Henrik von Eckermann and his farrier, brilliant farrier Vincent Lamel, and saw how they did it pretty much the same as what I would do, or any farrier with experience would do it, the trimming. But there again, that's the same thing. They're quite short when they perform 100%, surprisingly.
Well, to that point, maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a barefoot conference here in Reno, and as you might expect, a lot of it was a discussion of Mustangs. But what shocked me was the radiographs, how incredibly short the feet were, but density of sole. So I think that's something maybe that works into that as well. Yeah, and if they're on and off of shoes, they may not have the time to develop that density. I don't know,
I'm not too worried about that, but when it comes to that shortness, I have to add something to that, because I see the consequence when they're too short over time. Because when they're at that shortness there, I try to keep it then. I don't want it to be shorter than what I said. Because if they get short, that goes from being okay, that's ideal, to very bad. So you want to be on the safe side there, okay? Because the consequences of being sore over time is irreversible, and they are determined. So you do not want that. Very important. Miss the track.
So there was a study done at the convention, and it was Dinger, Ivan Bell, did on the military horses for London, and the horses that were on concrete were like Jim Blurton said, they were very tubular because of standing on the concrete all the time. But then when they would go up and go to the reserves at Milton Mulberry, they would change dramatically. And so it's like, your study was done on a certain type of soil, but do you find that the things would change if you did the exact same study on pavement?
I would assume that, yeah. But also remember that these horses here, they're quite a lot smaller than the army horses. They're not as heavy in general. I think that matters as well. And I think the riders are less heavy as well. So I think but like your point is that basically there are more factors into it. And this is the information we get from this research is very restricted to the parameters that have been done in, which is important to remember with all research.
So basically, good horses make good trainers and good farriers, but good farriers and good trainers very seldom make good horses.
I didn't get that, sorry.
Like a good horse is always going to find a good farrier and a good trainer, but there's very seldom does a good farrier or a good trainer find a good horse.
Yeah, I see. I have a lot of customers that maybe is not very good riders, but they got a lot of money, and they get good horses, and they break. But yeah, in general, yeah, of course you're right.
Regarding adding frog engagement, how would you choose for varied conditions during, say, the winter? Say in New York State, where we have now snow to battle with, and yet they're still trying to perform. Or stay in a position ready to perform and not, say, removing frog engagement for the winter when have their feet collapse. What would you do to prevent that?
I have the same condition at home. We have 6 months of winter. So we shoe with snow pads and studs, and we need shoes on. You cannot have horses that can be used without shoes. Even horses not used need shoes because of the ice. So yes, I'm very used to them conditions there. And it's problematic, but you just have to be even more aware of what kind of shoe package you put on there to engage the frog. Because everything you put on there works against it, so you have to put on something to compensate for it. That's the easy way to say it.
So would you add, say, a snow rim pad to one of those 3D pads, 3D frog engagement pads? Would you put them together?
Yeah.
Because it seems like an extra height added to the package that would...
Yeah, it will be. It's a compromise, but then if you do that, you don't get clogging, you get traction, and you get frog engagement. But you also add on length to the foot, which is not good. So then if that is a problem for breakover, you can consider where you place the studs, place them more inside, further back, if it needs more breakover. That's how I approach it. And you're nodding, so maybe you agree. But it's interesting though, because there's not a lot of study on horseshoeing that's done in the winter conditions that we used to. So you have to think outside of the box compared to the studies and the books and everything. Are we getting there now? Yeah, I think so. I think you've been listening for a long time, so. And I haven't seen anyone that actually thought, there's one over there, he's been nodding a bit, but I think I kept you awake. I'm very happy with that. I want to say thanks to the audience. I want to say thanks to the organization for the opportunity to come here. It's been an honor. I've been here for the whole week, and I learned a lot and engaged with people and met friends and got some new ones, I hope. It's been absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
And in honor of Jim Linzy, this is a replica of one of his horseshoes, and for everything that he's done for our industry, we give this to Askel. Thank you for your presentation.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thank you.